Welcome to the Hub of Vision Show, your go-to podcast for the most influential books from the greatest minds in business. We're talking marketing, influence, productivity hacks, sales, and more, all to help you accelerate your vision. Get ready for insights and strategies that drive success. You're tuned in to the Hub of Vision Show, where your business vision takes off now.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. And you know me, I love to go deep, so today we're diving into the psychology of persuasion.
Ooh, always a fascinating topic.
I know, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're dissecting this podcast episode. It's called The Influence Show, and it's all about Chapter 3 of, Robert Cialdini's book, Influence.
A classic. Cialdini's work is really fundamental if you want to understand why people say yes.
Yeah, for sure. It's like the OG of persuasion, And this episode we're looking at, well, it really zooms in on how effort, commitment, and consistency play these surprising roles in how we make decisions.
It's true. Think about it. Would you believe that things like those crazy initiation rituals, even like fraternity hazing, can actually end up increasing loyalty?
It's kind of wild, right? The harder it is to get into something, the more we value it. It's totally counterintuitive.
It is. But that's what makes Cialdini's work so insightful. He reveals these hidden mechanisms that drive our behavior.
Okay, so let's break this down. The podcast uses some pretty intense examples like those Thanga tribe initiations where they go through these painful ordeals. But how does this idea of effort equals value actually show up in our everyday lives?
Okay, well, think about it this way. The more effort we put into something, the more we tend to value it. It's like we're telling ourselves, I invested so much in this, so it must be worth it.
So it's not just about the thing itself, but the effort we connect to it?
Exactly. It's that psychological link we create. And marketers, they've definitely caught on to this. Ever notice those super long onboarding processes for some new software? Or those times where you can customize a product exactly how you want it?
Oh, like those quizzes to find your perfect shade of lipstick or create your own custom skincare routine. I love those.
Haha. See, those are perfect examples. By getting you to invest time and effort, brands are kind of sneakily increasing your perceived value of their product. You're not just buying any lipstick. You're buying the one that's perfectly made for you.
That's so smart. It's like they're giving us a mini psychology lesson while we shop.
Totally. Okay, but ready for another fascinating piece of this. It's the power of small commitments. You would be surprised how even tiny actions can snowball into huge shifts in behavior.
Yeah, the podcast used that example of Chinese political prisoners during the Korean War, right?
That was intense.
It was. But it really shows the principle of consistency. So the Chinese would get American prisoners to make small concessions, admitting that, America wasn't perfect. And these little statements over time would chip away at their resistance, making them more open to the whole communist ideology.
Wow. So it's starting with a tiny yes and ending up somewhere you never thought you'd be.
Exactly. It all comes back to how we see ourselves. When we make a commitment, even a small one, we start seeing ourselves as a kind of person who does that thing.
So we kind of adjust our self-image to match our actions. It makes sense, but it's kind of scary how easily we can be swayed like that. It is something to be mindful of, both as consumers and just as people, trying to figure out what makes us tick.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. We do something and then we kind of have to adjust our beliefs to fit what we did.
Exactly. It's this weird feedback loop in our brains.
Yeah.
But this consistency thing, it's not just some, brainwashing tactic from the war. It's happening all the time in marketing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's almost creepy how they use these tactics, It's like they know exactly how to push our buttons.
Well, it's not mind reading, but they are pretty good at understanding human behavior. Remember those lead magnets we talked about? That's consistency in action right there.
You mean those free ebooks or webinars you sign up for with your email? Oh, yeah. I am totally guilty of falling for those.
See? It seems like such a small thing at the time.
Right. It's just an email address, no big deal.
Exactly. And that's the genius of it. They get you to take that first little step, and bam, you're in their system. You're getting emails. Maybe you start following them on social media. And each little interaction just reinforces that initial commitment. Before you know it, you're a loyal customer.
It's true. You start out thinking, oh, I'll just get this free thing. But then you're invested.
Totally. Okay, but now here's where it gets maybe a little shady. Cialdini talks about this tactic called the low ball. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, the low ball. It sounds kind of, manipulative, doesn't it? The podcast gave that example with the car salesman, right? Mm-hmm. They give you this amazing deal, and then, surprise, it's not actually available.
Yep. classic bait and switch. But you know what's interesting? It actually works a lot of the time.
I guess once you've gotten your hopes up, it's hard to walk away.
Right. You've already put time and energy into thinking about it. Maybe you've even told your friends and family you're getting this great deal. So to back out then, it feels like losing.
So you just go along with it, even if the deal isn't so great anymore. Wow.
A lot of people do. It's all about sticking to that commitment, even when it's not really in their best interest.
So, I mean, is the low ball always a bad thing?
Well, it's definitely ethically questionable.
Yeah.
But the principle behind it, that power of commitment, it can be used in good ways too, you know? Like
Yeah.
think about upsells in e-commerce.
Oh, you mean when you add something to your cart and then they're like, hey, you might also like this.
Exactly. They're using the fact that you're already committed to buying something. You're in that shopping mindset, so you're way more likely to say yes to adding more stuff.
That's true. I do that all the time. It's like, well, I'm already spending money. Might as well get the matching shoes.
Exactly. It
Mhm.
makes sense from a business perspective. But it's good for us as shoppers to know these tactics are out there.
For sure, awareness is key, right? Okay, so speaking of commitment, let's talk about what happens when we make those commitments public. The podcast had that example of the Iowa homeowners who pledged to save energy, remember?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
So they were promised they'd get recognized in the local paper, but then something happened and the newspaper couldn't do it. But guess what? They still ended up saving more energy than the people who hadn't made that public pledge.
I know. It's so interesting, right? Like, even without the external reward, that public commitment made a huge difference. Why do you think that is?
I guess it has to do with like wanting to be seen as consistent, like you
No.
told everyone you were going to do this thing, so you kind of have to do it, right?
Exactly. We want our actions to match up with how we present ourselves to the world.
Makes sense. I can definitely see that in my own life. Like sometimes I'll post about a goal I have on social media and yeah, part of me wants people to cheer me on, but it's more than that. It's like I've said it out loud now, so I better follow through.
It's like we're using that social pressure to keep ourselves accountable. And honestly, it's pretty effective. I mean, think about all the fitness apps that encourage you to share your workouts or people announcing their career goals online. It's all about that public commitment.
So we're kind of like creating the support system for ourselves by making things public. It's interesting how much our behavior is influenced by like what other people think, even when it's just like implied pressure.
It is. Okay, but let's switch gears for a sec. The podcast also talked about this difference between external rewards and inner responsibility. Did you catch that part?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. So what's the deal with that? Like, what's the difference between relying on those external rewards versus like fostering inner responsibility?
It all comes down to this. When we rely too much on external rewards, like discounts, freebies, all that, the actions people take, they tend to be pretty fleeting.
Fleeting, like they don't last.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they'll do it as long as the reward is there, but then poof, motivation gone. Think of it like, I don't know, training a dog with treats.
Oh, yeah, they only do the trick if they know a treat is coming.
Exactly. But what if instead of treats, those actions came from like a sense of inner responsibility?
Okay. So instead of doing something for the reward, they do it because it like aligns with their values or something.
You got it. When it becomes something they want to do, not something they're just told to do, that's when you see real lasting change.
Okay, I see the difference. So how do marketers like tap into that? It's not as simple as just offering a discount, right?
Right. This is where like the real art of marketing comes in. It's about storytelling, branding, all that good stuff. It's about making people feel like a product is, part of who they are.
So like if someone's really into sustainability, a brand would emphasize how their products are like eco-friendly and stuff.
Exactly. It's about connecting with those deeper values, not just selling a product, but selling an identity almost.
That's so interesting. It's not just buy our thing because it's cool. It's more like buy our thing because it says something about you.
Exactly. It's way more powerful and it builds a much stronger connection.
Wow, this has been like mind-blowing. Seriously, who knew there was so much psychology behind marketing?
Right. And the more you understand these principles, the more you can use them in like all areas of your life.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the like one big thing we want our listeners to remember?
Well, no matter what you're doing, building a brand, trying to reach a personal goal, whatever, remember that it all starts with small steps. Create a path that encourages effort, makes people want to commit, and then rewards them for sticking with it.
And make sure it's genuine.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, think about the things you're committed to, big or small. How did you get there? Were any of these principles at play? And how can you use this new knowledge to make choices that, truly reflect who you are and what you want to achieve?
Great question. And with that, we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
I hope you're leaving with some powerful takeaways to fuel your success. But don't stop here. Take it to the next level. For more insights, head over to hubofvision.com/podcast, where you'll find illustrations and infographics designed to impact your brain in a whole new way. Visualize your success and absorb these strategies deeper to become the excelling entrepreneur you're meant to be. Visit hubofvision.com/podcast and level up your vision today.